Hey, it's Antonio. Welcome back to my channel. Let's have some fighting words. In this video, I want to talk about what happens after Kati, Taylor, and Amanda Serrano, they match up and they fight. What happens after that? Well, you're talking about two of the most, probably in the history of women's boxing, most decorated women at one time, both at their peak, their height, fighting. Okay, well, what happens after that fight? Let's just say Kati Taylor wins. Who can she fight after she fought Amanda Serrano? Where we, the public, were going to be like, wow, that's going to be a tough one for you. Really nobody. There's nobody out there who has who's as decorated as Amanda Serrano and has the experience of Amanda Serrano in just the grit of Amanda Serrano. After you beat that person, where do you go? So as I was thinking about this, I was like, well, there is one individual that would make a compelling fight for both style matchups. And that person is Cecilia Brækhus, the first lady of boxing. And, both Kati Taylor and Amanda Serrano, they fight at light welterweight. And then you have Cecilia Brækhus, who fights at welterweight. So is she bigger? Yes, because unfortunately, women's boxing doesn't have that many boxers. And, a lot of women have to go up to fight or they got to go down to fight. But she's primarily stayed at welterweight. So it's not going to be like a huge weight discrepancy or anything like that. But yes, she will have a little bit of size on them. So when I match all three of them together, because I'm just looking at how Cecilia Brækhus would match up against the winner, I have to look at both Kati Taylor and Amanda Serrano because they haven't fought yet. So when I match Cecilia Brækhus up, I look at experience. Well, clearly all of them are the top of the top, the creme de la creme. You're not going to look at experience and say this person really stands out. They're just not. All of them have held multiple titles and championships and have unified, and they're just all decorated. You look at experience. Kati Taylor hasn't had as many professional fights, but she's had a lot of fights, especially amateur. She's also an Olympian. You got to take these things into consideration. So there's nothing really to distinguish any of the three, when you look at experience or being decorated, I'll say. You look at the grit, determination. Again, look at what they've been through. Again, Taylor, she's an Olympian. So it's just like, there's nothing really that you can say. Cecilia Brækhus, she started off with kickboxing. Well, Amanda Serrano does kickboxing and she also does MMA. Kati Taylor started off in Taekwondo. And, she won a bunch of trophies there, and then she just graduated to boxing. In which case, I think all three of them have found their true love and their true passion in boxing. And I think their skill setting shows the best in boxing. Now, granted, I've never seen Kati Taylor in a point fighting system, but somebody as aggressive as Kati Taylor doesn't need to be in a point fighting system. She needs to be where she's at. She needs to be in boxing. Another thing, but now I'm gonna try to break them up and see where Cecilia Brækhus actually stacks up. So one thing that Cecilia Brækhus has is instinctual combinations, and when I say instinctual, I mean like on the fly. It's just natural. It just comes to her. It's very fluid. It's very free and flowing. As opposed to somebody who's got to think about a combination, then they do it. Sometimes you can look at Anthony Joshua and he can look a little robotic, and then you look at somebody like a Tyson Fury and he's very free flowing, and he can pretty much do anything he wants with his body. So that's what I mean. Very instinctual. Whatever the situation and whatever the position, she's very dangerous in that position and that situation, and she can fire off multiple combinations. She's good with short punches as well. In which case, I just feel like, so styles make fights. Now, if you got somebody who's great in fighting, and to be fair, all three are good when they're fighting in the inside. However, because Cecilia Brækhus is bigger, and because she's fought bigger women, or she's just fought bigger women on a more consistent basis. I'll say it like that because a lot of women do go up and down in weight. But she's fought bigger women on a more consistent basis. I think she has a true gift for short punches, especially in combinations. So now we're just gonna mesh the contrasting styles of the three. I think Cecilia Brækhus would fare very well against Kati Taylor because Kati Taylor is very aggressive. Kati Taylor doesn't necessarily want to back up. I'm not saying she can't back up and fight, but that is not her first thing to do. She wants to go forward. And then you have Cecilia Brækhus, who is very aggressive as well. She will go forward. She's going to go forward. She wants to go through you. Cecilia Brækhus doesn't have a lot of knockouts. I think she has like 4 knockouts to her resume or something like that. She doesn't have a lot. Amanda Serrano has a lot. She has like 30. It's in the 30s. And she's got like 40-something fights. But Cecilia Brækhus, so I remember there was a commentator who said this about Bernard Hopkins. He said, he's not going to knock you out, but he's going to batter you senseless. And the day after, you're going to know you've been in a fight. That's Cecilia Brækhus. She's not going to knock you out, but she's going to batter you senseless. And the next day, you are going to know that you've been in a fight. You're going to know that you fought Cecilia Brækhus. And because of the way Kati Taylor fights, she likes to be up close and personal. She likes to close that distance. Also because, she is a little shorter. She likes to close that distance. And she's a lot more compact, shorter arms and everything like that. So you can close the distance all you want, but just know Cecilia Brækhus is not going to back up. And just know Cecilia Brækhus feels extremely comfortable fighting in a telephone booth. Now you take Amanda Serrano on the flip hand side, has better feet, better movement. So then Kati Taylor. I can see Amanda Serrano backing up, but I can also see her having to do a game plan against Cecilia Brækhus of countering everything. She's not going to lead anything. She's just going to wait for Cecilia to throw in, and she's going to counter. And she'd probably be doing primarily just jabs while she backs up. However, that would probably still go in the end towards Cecilia Brækhus, because of the three, I don't too much see them knocking out Cecilia Brækhus. Is it possible Cecilia Brækhus could knock them out? Maybe. She is bigger than them naturally, but judging by her record, I'd probably say not. That's why I said, batter them senselessly. Cecilia Brækhus is great with combinations. Now, if Amanda Serrano's backing up and she's just primarily throwing jabs just to stay busy and to get some movement going and just to get her flowing, possibly, but I just see Cecilia Brækhus just racking up points, to be honest with you. And also I see her like really closing that distance. I see her eating shots. I see her, Cecilia Brækhus doesn't look like it, but she can take a lot of punishment. And she's walked through a lot of punches. She's walked, and not saying that she doesn't have great defense. I just think she has that thing in her, that fire in her that's like, not today. And I can see her walking Serrano down. I can see her just going back and forth, fighting for a position with Kati Taylor. But I could see her walking Serrano down. And if that be the case, I see her probably scoring more points. Because this is definitely going to come down to a point system. More than likely, like I said, Cecilia Brækhus doesn't have a lot of knockouts. So I'm assuming it's going to come down to points. If it does, I think she's more experienced in those championship rounds than Kati Taylor or Amanda Serrano. Yeah, they're both champions, and yeah, they've both been in championship rounds, but they haven't been in as many championship rounds as Cecilia Brækhus, because she doesn't have that knockout power where she can drop girls like Serrano does, and she has more fights professionally than Kati Taylor. So I think in crunch time, I would match up Cecilia Brækhus to do fairly well against Amanda Serrano as well. It really is tough to say, but that's just basically what I'm seeing. I just see Cecilia Brækhus as racking up points. Honestly, just racking up points and just walking Amanda Serrano down. I see Katie Taylor trying to circle around because she's really great when it comes to burst of energy and just quickly positioning around an opponent real quick. But overall, Cecilia Brækhus is going to have something for that, and she'll be there the whole time. She's not backing off, and she definitely isn't backing up. And I think the aggression of Katie Taylor would play largely into Cecilia Brækhus' hands. Also, the foot positioning of Katie Taylor, she has a very wide stance. So, like, once she's planted, she's planted. So she won't be able to quickly scoot away once the firefight begins. So I look at it like that. I just see, again, Cecilia Brækhus just kind of having her way. I feel like it's going to be a wrestling match with Katie Taylor. I feel like it will come down to grit with Katie Taylor. But in the latter rounds, when you see Katie Taylor get tired, she's throwing bombs, but she's throwing one bomb at a time. Cecilia Brækhus is throwing bombs and combinations. There's a clear difference. When you look at the championship rounds, Katie Taylor is not throwing combinations. Cecilia Brækhus is throwing combinations from every angle. Uppercuts, body shots, jabs, overhand rights, like everything. Shovel hooks, it doesn't matter. She's going everywhere. Katie Taylor is just, going for broke at that moment, but she's throwing one bomb at a time. And I think that will work against her because Katie Taylor would be way too stubborn to back up. But you can't stay where you are and throw one bomb at a time. So I just see her succumbing somewhat also to herself, just personality-wise. She's not the type that's going to back off. Now you have Amanda Serrano, somebody who will back off. But again, to the judges, I just think it's going to look like, oh, you're backing up and you're not throwing that much, or you're throwing a very simple, combination or technique or whatever. And then you have Cecilia Brækhus, who's being extremely aggressive, coming forward, walking her down, throwing combinations, setting traps. And she's bigger, so she can absorb whatever you're giving her, and she can more than give it back to you. So, in the end, I'm not necessarily saying who's going to be the clear-cut winner, but I am definitely saying whoever the winner of Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano is, please make that Cecilia Brækhus fight. Because who are you going to fight after this? Clarissa Shields is just too big for you. Savannah Marshall's too big for you. Who are you going to fight? Like, everybody else, who are you going to fight? Everybody else is either way too small or, well, not way too small. But in terms of being decorated, it would be fun to see a fight like that with Cecilia Brækhus and the winner of Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano. But you tell me what you think. Drop your comments down below. Do you think that would be a fun fight to have Cecilia Brækhus fight the winner of Serrano and Taylor? Do you think Cecilia Brækhus could beat the winner of Serrano Taylor? How do you think she fares up? Looking at all the points, looking at who's more decorated and who's been through more. I don't know. It's a really tough one, but it's very, very, very intriguing. But those are my thoughts. I want to hear what you have to say. Drop your comments down below. As always, please like, please share, and please subscribe.